My practice focuses on life processes and systems, addressing organic change and transformation. Recurrent themes include breathing, water, and time.
I began as a painter and a printmaker, but early on became interested in sculpture and multimedia works. What I like to do is explore the in-between areas.
At times, my drawings push the sculpture. Other times, sculpture and installations push the flat work. Insight from one media continually affects the other. The exploration, asking questions, not necessarily getting the answers, is essential, which cycles through a process of control, loss of control, fluidity, shifts of reality, chance, and change. Trained as a teacher, I went back to school in my late 20s, earned an MFA in art from the University of Alabama, then served on the faculty at the University of Alabama in Birmingham for the next 6 years. My early prints and collages were rooted in the organic. My paintings and sculpture leaned towards minimalism and color fill. My multimedia work began in the late 1970s with environment, structure, sound. With the viewer being asked to become a part of the work, sound was added to my sculpture by a collaborator. Not satisfied with the sound, I decided to score it myself, sketching the interactions between the forms in a series of sound drawings. This was the beginning of my work using sound as a physical part of my sculpture.
The next showing of the installation changed the placement of the forms into a circle. Influenced by a summer spent in 1976 in England, visiting stone circles, including Stonehenge, ritual became an important element.
For my next installation involving sound, form, and movement, I used bare wooden frames, not covered with canvas. My 1981 installation, Given the Space, was concerned with experimenting with space using sound and visual movement to develop progression. The room of the drawings conveyed information and clues, exploring the coexistence of space and time. My Air Player series is a major part of my oeuvre. I began with air movement as sound and evolved to air movement as breath. I was asked to be part of a group sound exhibition at PS1 in Queens. I translated one of the sound drawings into sculpture. Air was programmed to flow out of the pipes via hoses, creating the movement of sound. Though the name Air Player wasn't used at the time, this was the beginning of the series. Air Player 3. I had just moved to New York City and was exhibiting with Sasha Ross. I was fascinated by the breathing of the hoses connected to the blower box hidden behind the wall in Air Player 1. So I made it a visual part of my next two installations, building two large blowers, exposing the back wall, using air as breath, with the hose movement referencing mechanical breathing. Sasha introduced me to Dieudonné paper mill. Working with handmade paper became my main interest, creating several series using custom-shaped paper, experimenting, manipulating, making layered landscapes. From this work, handmade paper became the source material used for the Air Player series. I made large forms of shaped paper embedding the blower hoses. The hoses moved the new forms slowly, creating a movement of shadows. I was playing with what was real or not real, working with both cast and painted shadows on the wall. A small box with an individual blower equipped with relay switching was attached to each form so that there was more movement. The shadows on the walls referenced shifts of reality, forms appearing to be coming to life. With Air Player 9, I wanted more curved forms. Working with Paul Wong at Dieudonné, we built a cradle that would allow the forms to dry in a curve. Also, I wanted individual blowers to be scored as music. I spoke with close friend Larry Pulaski, co-creator of HMSL, who referred me to Nick Dukoski. Years of collaboration began using Amiga 500. Speakers were added for the newly digitized blower sounds. AirPlayer drawings are on the walls. With AirPlayer 12, I collaborated with architect Alan Bruton to build an enclosed environment for the viewer to walk into, with walls built of optical lenses, sandblasted plastic, and gypsum board. Inside, the viewer experiences the organic forms with a computer-driven light and sound. Outside on a shelf are copies of the AirPlayer Limited Edition, a translation of the AirPlayer series into a book form, which also includes sound and light. 1991. As a result of the AIDS crisis, the first Gulf War, and my recent experience with the terminal illness of my mother, death was in the air. The work is more expressive, with an emotional quality. Individual components, such as the skin rack and the apica wall backs, have become autonomous works. With this atrium commission, Landscape Dialogue, I wanted the forms to be organic, so I used sprayed apica fiber. The forms are a counterpoint to the architecture. The sky acts as a background plane. Its light makes the thin paper areas look like veins, which seem to appear and disappear during the movement. Paint has been applied so the viewer perceives a change in color. The pivoting of the forms ensures a constant state of transition, symbolic of a constant state of change in life itself. Interiors project examined the notion of interiors and the function of skin as container, barrier, and exterior structure. Using handmade paper pulp, I have cast and sprayed, adding lights and electronic sound and blowers, blurring the distinction between the mechanical and the organic, creating hybrid organisms which appear to breathe, move, and possess lifeblood. This artist book is made of layers of photographs with pulp sprayed on plastic inserted into sleeves, images superimposed as the pages are turned, creating a translucent interior spaces. This atrium, sentient matrix, had to relate to multiple sclerosis. The sculpture is an abstraction of the central nervous system. Within translucent abaca fiber forms, moving light references the linear rhythms of nerve impulses. When the light stops, it represents what happens in MS when nerves are damaged. You can see an image of my studio with a scale model, long rows of sprayed abaca forms, and next a photo collage of the team that worked with me. Layered shadows. Shadows photographed, printed on translucent papers, cut out and arranged between sheets of wet abaca. Next, dried sheets are layered together to continuing the developing shadows. Interested in changing the surface of the paper, I sprayed fiber onto it, adding a layer of skin. The next series of work grew out of sentient matrix, where I had experimented with paper fiber using my own beater. Most use transparency, mapping, and layering. Pigment and pigmented fibers in liquid are poured onto canvas or paper laying flat. A process of manipulation and drying takes place. Some layers are removed, leaving a history. Others are added. The result builds a calligraphy of movement, mirroring changing organic processes, micro or macro, referencing layered earth or atmospheric skyscapes. Lights and Layers is the title of both a book and a traveling exhibition, a comprehensive look at over 40 years of my work. I laid out the book on my studio walls, visually where I could play with its structure. I was groping to understand the multiple concepts that shaped my work and how the book could explore them. The book was published with the help of a team, including notable writers and artists who contributed essays. The traveling exhibition showed in 3 different states, 6 locations, each site-specific. This gave me the chance to look back at the history of my work, to see how newer pieces fit, to hear how an early sound piece works with one recently created. It has pushed my boundaries, taking me into that uncomfortable zone, which is one of the great things we get to experience as artists.